When Brock Lesnar steps into a room, everything changes. That's not hyperbole. That's not just promotional language. That's the reality of how professional wrestling works when you have a force of nature like the Beast incarnate deciding it's time to make a statement. And when that statement involves going face-to-face with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins on the same episode of Raw, when three of the biggest names in wrestling history are standing in the same space, the same ring, the same moment, you're looking at something that has the potential to reshape the entire landscape of professional wrestling. This is what we're breaking down today on WWE Express. Let's establish the foundation of what makes this confrontation so genuinely electric from a wrestling perspective. Brock Lesnar has never been a guy who shows up just to be part of the show. Every time the Beast incarnate appears, every time he steps between those ropes or steps into that ring, it's because he has a specific purpose, a specific goal, and a specific message he needs to deliver. He doesn't do interviews for no reason. He doesn't involve himself in angles that don't directly benefit him or directly serve his interests. So when Brock Lesnar decides to go face-to-face with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, you can absolutely guarantee that there's something significant happening, something that matters, something that's going to have consequences far beyond just one episode of Raw. Roman Reigns, as we've established in previous videos, is the measuring stick of the entire organization. He's the tribal chief. He's the guy who's positioned at the absolute apex. He's the one who defines what championship-level talent looks like. He's beaten legends. He's main event the biggest shows. He carries himself with a confidence that comes from knowing that he's faced every major challenger and prevailed. But Brock Lesnar is different. Brock Lesnar has a history with Roman that's built on legitimate dominance. Brock has beaten Roman before. Brock has been in situations where Roman was in peril, where Roman had to dig deeper than he'd ever dug, where Roman had to access parts of himself that he doesn't normally have to access. That history alone changes the dynamic of any confrontation between these two. Now add Seth Rollins to the equation, and you've got something genuinely unpredictable. Seth is positioned as one of the most talented, most versatile, most psychologically complex performers in the entire industry. He can operate as a singles competitor. He can operate within a faction. He can be the guy calling the shots or the guy taking orders. His role in this confrontation with Brock and Roman is absolutely crucial because Seth represents optionality. Seth represents the possibility that this situation goes in a completely different direction than anyone might expect. Does Seth align with Roman? Does Seth find common ground with Brock? Does Seth position himself as the third man who can manipulate both of them to his own advantage? Every single one of those possibilities is worth exploring. The psychology of a face-to-face confrontation in modern wrestling is incredibly important. This isn't just two guys meeting at a personal level. This is a moment that's being broadcast to the entire world. Fans are watching. Other wrestlers in the locker room are paying attention. Everyone is analyzing every single word, every single gesture, every single moment of body language to try and understand what's really happening, what's really being communicated, what the actual subtext is underneath the surface-level interaction. That's where great wrestling storytelling lives. That's where champions are made or broken. That's where narratives get shaped and recontextualized based on what happens in that moment. When Brock Lesnar steps into that ring, he brings with him an aura of legitimacy that's earned through years of proving himself as an absolutely dominant force. He's not just saying he's the toughest guy in the room. He's proven it against the biggest names in the industry, multiple times, in multiple different contexts. That's why when Brock looks at someone, when Brock steps into someone's space, when Brock makes his presence felt, it matters. Roman Reigns understands this better than anybody. Roman has felt Brock's power. Roman knows what it's like to be in a situation where Brock is the superior force. But Roman has also shown growth, shown evolution, shown that he can overcome even someone like Brock Lesnar through sheer force of will and psychological superiority. So when these two lock eyes, you're looking at two men who have legitimate reasons to believe they can beat each other, two men who have proven it, two men who represent different philosophical approaches to dominance. Seth Rollins in this dynamic is fascinating because he occupies a completely different space in the hierarchy. Seth has never positioned himself as the unstoppable force. Seth has always positioned himself as the guy who's clever enough, quick enough, intelligent enough, psychologically advanced enough to overcome people who might be stronger or bigger or more physically dominant. Seth is about execution. Seth is about precision. Seth is about getting in people's heads and making them make mistakes. So when Seth is in a room with Brock and Roman, Seth isn't trying to out-physical them. Seth is trying to outthink them, outmaneuver them, put them in positions where they have to deal with complications they didn't anticipate. Here's where it gets really interesting from a booking and storytelling perspective. A face-to-face situation with three guys like this could lead to literally anywhere. Does this escalate into a physical confrontation right there on Raw, with security having to separate them and the show getting turned upside down? Does this stay on the microphone level, with each of these three making their case, making their statement, trying to convince the world that they're the one who should be feared, the one who should be respected, the one who deserves the most prominent position? Does this set up a triple threat match? Does this set up some kind of multi-man ladder match or elimination match at the next major event? Does this create a situation where alliances form and shift and change based on who sees what as the greatest threat? The psychological warfare element is absolutely crucial here. Brock Lesnar has never been a guy who needs to talk a lot. Brock can say more with a look, more with his positioning, more with his presence than most guys can say with an entire promo. Roman Reigns has proven that he can cut promos that resonate on multiple levels, that accomplish multiple goals simultaneously, that educate the audience while communicating directly to his opponents. Seth Rollins is genuinely brilliant on the microphone, capable of shifting between different tones and different approaches depending on what the moment requires. So when these three are in the same space, the verbal exchanges could be absolutely incredible. The tension could be absolutely incredible. The subtext could be absolutely incredible. What makes this confrontation particularly fascinating is that all three of these men have legitimate reasons to view each other as threats. Brock looks at Roman and sees someone who's taken lessons from their previous encounters, someone who's evolved, someone who's become harder to control and harder to dominate. Roman looks at Brock and sees the one force in the industry that has legitimately made him work harder, made him reach deeper, made him question whether he's really on the level he claims to be. Seth looks at both of them and sees opportunities. Seth sees ways to position himself as the solution, as the guy who can operate effectively in spaces where these titans clash. The narrative framework of having these three together on one episode of Raw also has massive implications for the entire direction of the company. If Brock is being positioned as a serious threat to Roman's dominance, that changes everything about how we view upcoming championship matches, upcoming major events, upcoming storyline directions. If Seth is being positioned as someone who can operate effectively in this space, that changes how we view Seth's positioning going forward. If alliances form or shift, that could reshape faction dynamics, that could create new feuds, that could open up storyline possibilities that nobody has even considered yet. The beauty of this kind of confrontation is that it's not dependent on a match result to be meaningful. These three men can just be in the same space, can just stand across from each other, and that moment alone says everything. That moment alone communicates power dynamics, that moment alone establishes threat levels, that moment alone plants seeds for future encounters. And that's the hallmark of truly excellent wrestling psychology. You don't need violence to make something meaningful. You don't need physicality to make something matter. You need intelligence. You need presence. You need performers who understand how to operate on that psychological level. So here's what I want to know from you. If you could choose what happens during this face-to-face confrontation, what would you want to see? Would you want to see Brock make a statement that shakes Roman to his core? Would you want to see Roman stand his ground and show that he's not intimidated by the beast incarnate? Would you want to see Seth position himself in a way that creates an advantage for him, maybe even getting Brock and Roman to focus on each other while he watches from the shadows? Or is there something completely different you think should happen, some unpredictable turn that would make this even more compelling? Head down to that comments section right now and tell me your prediction. Tell me what you think happens when these three legends are in the same ring. Tell me who you think comes out on top of that confrontation. Tell me where you think this is all leading. Because this is the kind of moment that's worth discussing, worth analyzing, worth breaking down from every possible angle. And I want to know what you think. Make sure you're subscribed to WWE Express because we're constantly covering the biggest moments, the most important storylines, and the deepest wrestling psychology analysis on the platform. Drop a like if this face-to-face confrontation between Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins has you absolutely pumped for what's coming next. And thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on WWE